Hi everyone, today we got more sideways choppy action. That 55 EMA on the hourly chart continues to be overhead resistance, hit that a couple times in the pre-market, sold to the support level, the 144 EMA and this trend support in here. Everything says this is pullback in time, sideways consolidation, right at all-time highs, just off of all-time highs. But is this going to break once we see this consolidation over here, or are we going to hold this support and rally? Let's take a look at all of the charts. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got Lambda associated with Microsoft striking a multi-billion-dollar deal for AI infrastructure for NVIDIA, so NVIDIA going much higher on this news. Of course, NVIDIA just continues to rake in the profits, billions and billions of dollars selling these chips, and now you got another one, startup Lambda again. Multi-billion-dollar deal with Microsoft for artificial intelligence chips, thousands of NVIDIA chips going to be sold. The numbers I saw were around 10 billion, but of course, this is another hyperscaler thing, and you got NVIDIA reaping the benefits of delivering AI infrastructure. They'll continue to deliver the GB300 systems, and they say here we love NVIDIA products. They have the best accelerators on the market, and of course NVIDIA went higher on this news. Moving over to fear and greed, we're at a 44 from a 36, so market stepping up a little bit on this indicator. Still greed on momentum. Strength continues to decline here. And then looking at breadth, also declining here over the last couple of trading sessions. Put call ratio continues to elevate off a slightly higher low. VIX still holding right in line with that 50 SMA. And then looking at safe haven demand, stepping up a little bit in extreme greed. And then look at this movement here. Junk bonds spiking downwards here today. Extreme greed on that metric. Wonder what happened in bonds. We'll have to take a look at that later. Moving over to seasonal markets here, you can see bullish period seasonally. Even if markets wanted to go lower, I think this is going to offer some support to markets over the next trading month. See how this looks after the kind of mid-month. Mid-month I think is going to be interesting, but either way, bullish seasonally. Moving over to the economic calendar here, you can see Palantir today beat on the top and bottom lines and raised guidance. They did really, really well. Simon Property Group beat on earnings, missed on revenues pretty substantially though. Wonder how they're doing. I did sell all of my Simon Property Group at a pretty high valuation in my opinion. Wonder how that affected them. Realty Income missing by 1 cent on earnings, beating on revenues. They should be in good shape after that. Clorox here beating on both. Staples still hanging in there really strong. For tomorrow you got AMD. That's going to be an interesting one. Of course, you got Shopify, Uber, Yum Brands in there for tomorrow as well. Global Payments, another interesting one to watch. See how they are getting order flows. Match Group in there tomorrow as well. And then for Wednesday, pretty much just AAPL, McDonald's, Qualcomm, ARM, DoorDash. Not too much else besides those few companies. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, you can see another sideways choppy day bouncing off of that 9 EMA there at 680.19. Touched that level and then bounced pretty substantially. So we were lower on the session, but ended up bouncing and holding pretty much flat on the day. Not too bad, right on that trend line. Want to see that trend line hold if it's going to do it. Otherwise, the 55 EMA here on the hourly chart has been resistance on the Friday and then the Thursday and then the Monday open here. So sideways choppy, still holding support, still holding resistance. Either way, no new additional information. Momentum fading, RSI still neutral there. So waiting to see how this goes. Still think we have a little bit of time until this catches up, and then we'll see, do we break down to the 21 EMA? Do we break down back to this highly traded zone around kind of 672 or so? I think that's likely. Get those gap fills, and then we'll see what happens after that. Moving over to the Tasty charts here on the hourly for the SPY chart, you can see we hit that trailing stop, which did step down a little bit. 685.09, still closed below it throughout the session, so that's your overhead resistance right now. Pulled back to the second ATR band, didn't hit the lowest one like it did back here on the Friday, so that is slightly bullish. It's still holding this kind of 55 EMA, 144 EMA area in here. EMAs are consolidated, so that's not what you really want to see. Usually once you're consolidated, that gives you an opportunity to sell off a little bit from that area, but not completely broken yet. 4-hour chart pretty much in line with what we were talking about, holding those zones of support, multiple tests to that 55 EMA to the downside on the 4-hour chart. 21 EMA is your resistance to the upside on the 4-hour chart. So don't love that. Stuck between the 21 and that 55. If this continues to sell, you have that lowest ATR band sitting all the way down there at 674.73. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, you can see very, very similar setup, but holding up a little bit stronger here. Dipped just a little bit lower in the open, but held much higher than this previous low here. Still sideways consolidation. You can see those EMAs and SMAs are pretty much all right on top of each other. Usually that means we're probably going to see at least a little bit of a sell here. Down to the trend line would give you about 1%, 1.5%. In here, you got that 200 sitting there at almost 2% lower, and that's right in here around kind of 620 or so. Either way, sideways consolidation, pull back in time, not unusual for a Monday. We'll see if this zone holds. Are we going to get a push higher, or is this going to pull back to this trend structure here? Still holding off of that 9 EMA, 624.13 is that area. I still think we're probably going to see somewhat of a pullback. Still looks like a kind of consolidation topping pattern here over the last couple days, and we certainly are not going higher, at least with this kind of price action that we saw here today. Moving over to the Tasty charts here on the daily chart, you can see we are coming off of that upper ATR band. We did pull back a little bit to that kind of second ATR band sitting in here at 631.47. Of course, this is continuing to trend up. That upper band is now at 640.75. No volume on the session, so not putting a ton of weight on today's price action. 9 EMA still holding in there at 625.84, but dropping to that hourly chart, you can see did flip back into bullish conditions on the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ is structurally a little bit more bullish than the previous SPY charts. Held that first ATR band on that dip low. Still same consolidated, didn't test the 144. Bullish conditions, like I said, 628.77 is now your trailing stop to the downside. But looking at the 4-hour chart, we still have that bearish condition. We flipped back into bearish conditions on the 30th, held it here on the 31st, didn't get anywhere near that trailing stop at 642. So mixed signals, sideways consolidation makes sense. Moving over to the daily charts here for the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell did dip quite a bit lower, did dip well below that 244 level, didn't hit the 55, didn't hit my next level there at 241, but we then bounced pretty substantially, found support in this area, and after hours are kind of drifting a little bit higher here. Would like to see this push up to kind of 249, 250 area, back into the trend area. Either way, we've been saying this is not going to break down until that 55 consolidates, and this is still sideways consolidation between that kind of 244 and this trend structure. Momentum is a little bit bearish, RSI is a little bit bearish, but clearly buyers coming in once again today. And then looking at the Dow, negative on the day, about 0.5%. 9 EMA still your support, 473.14. Momentum bearish, RSI right at the SMA. If it breaks down, that's going to be bearish. If it holds support, then maybe we can get another leg up back to this trend area around 483. Moving over to the Mag 7, same kind of setup as everything else. Sideways consolidation for the day. Resistance still 379. Support still the 21 EMA there at 372. Held that over the last 3 days. Resistance has held over the last 3 days. Waiting for some clear direction. Momentum bearish. RSI still slightly bearish. 55 EMA will catch up over the next couple of weeks, probably early December time period, and then we'll see, do we get a breakdown or do we get that kind of continuation higher? Moving over to Apple and Microsoft here, you got Apple breaking down a little bit more towards that 9 EMA, 266.58 was your support, touched that level, bounced a little bit. So far holding support, momentum fading a little bit, RSI fading a little bit. Looks like we're going to get a higher low structure, probably at this previous high here. Maybe we come into here around 264, but I would see the level 260.10 holding support. That would be interesting. Either way, getting a little bit of a pullback. We'll see how much lower it goes. And then Microsoft selling, of course, a little bit more, down just 78 cents, 55 EMA there at 513.50. Continues to be support. Kind of held this area in here. We're right back at it over the last 2 trading days. See if this zone holds. Do we go back to 506? For me, this still looks like a pretty clear topping pattern in the short term, but Microsoft is a very strong company. I kind of thought that before here, and it did go lower eventually, right? You had a very long-term topping pattern. It did eventually dip down pretty substantially. It went from kind of 465 down to 346 or so, and then ultimately rallied back up to kind of 555 area. Touch that zone again, touch that zone again. Seems like this is going to sell at least a little bit before we get another strong push to the upside. Moving over to NVIDIA and Tesla. We talked about Tesla looking really strong on the Friday, and it sure did have a really strong push today, 2.5%. or $11.80. That's another all-time high close here for Tesla. Continues to push towards that kind of 480 to 500 area. Probably going to watch this pretty closely. Let's go ahead and put an alert there. For Tesla, I think this can go probably another $10 to $20 potentially. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, looks really strong on this continuation for Tesla. And then looking at NVIDIA, looks a bit like a short-term top, a little bit of sideways consolidative. Still up 2% on that announcement that we talked about, but we're kind of right back into the range that we saw Wednesday. 2 consolidation days, pushed today, tried to go higher, ended up closing lower than the open. Momentum still bullish, RSI a little extended at a 69. Surprisingly, no additional volume on the day either. Of course, everything is still very bullish on NVIDIA. Not expecting this to change structure by any means, but a small hesitation, maybe down to 195 would be interesting, and then get a bigger continuation to that maybe 222, 230 area. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples fell 0.78 down to that next level, 79.40. You can see it on the day chart there. Fell as we expected it would. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish, hitting oversold conditions, hitting that next level. So this continues to be a pretty bearish structure. This was the zone where it held last time. It's going to be interesting to see. Maybe it holds that area this time, and then we'll see what happens after that. Or is this going to cut through and start breaking down to these next lower levels? You can see 74 is more of an intermediate level over the past couple of months, couple of years really. And then that next real strong level would be kind of 70.85. That was a peak low level here in March of 23. Kind of a consolidated area, overthrew it a couple of times. But at this point, you have to expect that this is going to break down a little bit more. I think this is probably going to sell through this area, even if in the short term we do get a little bit of a bounce from here, get a lower high, and then a continuation lower to that next zone. Makes sense to me. And then looking at discretionaries, went higher today, mostly driven by Amazon and Tesla. Both of those went higher on the day. Hit that next level, 242.77. Can we get above that and rocket to new all-time highs? Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. It does seem like this is going to go at this point. Starting to look more like a bullish triangle here with a flat top and higher low structure. Do we get that breakout? Watching this area closely. Moving over to 20 and 50 day breadth here, you can see 20 day held basically flat on the session, gap down and dojied on the session, threw a wick to the lows, didn't really break structure, closed right in the same zone. Momentum still bearish, RSI still bearish. Still believe this is going to go lower to this kind of 16 area as the EMAs and SMAs kind of catch up and we get that kind of pullback in time that we've been watching. Eventually this will break down a little bit more and price will go with it, but so far that hasn't happened yet. And then looking at 50 days, same kind of setup here. Continues to show this bearish structure, went right to the lows back from the 10th. Still think this is going to go to 32. Ultimately, I think 26 is probably the low for this next spike down. Moving over to the dollar did exactly what we hoped it would, got through that level. So far, it is above it, closes in about 45 minutes, should close above it. Looking at that 200 as your next target at 98.58, looking for this to continue to go higher here. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. Moving over to bonds. Bonds cratered here today. J&K was down almost 1%. Gap and fell really aggressive down to that next level, 96.51. That is usually signaling some bearishness to come. It's going to be interesting to see what that looks like tomorrow. Usually this is a little bit of a leading indicator, and that is falling aggressive. So watch out for that for tomorrow. TLT also went much lower. I was a little concerned that we might see the bounce from this area here, but it didn't do it, and now you have kind of this consolidation zone, this 55 EMA, the level there, 89.16, momentum bearish, RSI bearish, came up short of my target, that 92.82 area. I thought we would get a tag of that before we saw any pullbacks, but too bad, just a little bit short, a little frustrating with that, but either way, zone of support in here, momentum bearish, RSI bearish, does it cut through there, go to the 200 at 87.72. I think that's the next zone that's interesting if this 89.16 level breaks. Moving over to the VIX here, you can see the VIX did go to that level 1850, tag that level, same as the previous Friday, tag that level, and then sold off a little bit here. It is above the 9 EMA once again at 16.9, holding that slightly at a price action. Either way, though, this still looks like it's turning back up, headed towards that 28 area. I do believe it's going to get a spike there. We're still below the SMA on the RSI, so not quite bullish conditions yet, but it is still holding kind of a low, higher low here. Do we get a high double top kind of zone in there? Ultimately, I do think that is what's going to happen, but it might take a little bit more time to get there. A couple of weeks might be the time frame that we're looking at. Moving over to my accounts here, you can see I forgot to roll out these calls, which is super annoying. Looks like I'm not going to get assigned on them, so I should be able to sell the call tomorrow, but I should have been able to sell it today for probably a little bit more, which again is a little bit frustrating. Just forgot to do it. Annoying. Either way, made money on that position. Qs look like they're drifting just a little bit lower here. Same with the Russell, however, is basically flat. So wonder what the Qs are doing. Either way, this should be covered by that covered call position. Down to 610, plenty of credit, no issues. Still 7 days on it, so no issues there. And then the dollar going higher as you would expect. Not quite profitable on that position. Still got about another month. As long as the dollar continues to do what it's doing, should be in good position there. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of the Microsoft deal. What do you think this means for NVIDIA? How much higher can NVIDIA go? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.